Morning, Wabash. Giving this morning's chapel talk is Dr. Cherry. Dr. Cherry is an assistant professor of theater at Wabash College. He received his BA in history from Bates College, his MA in theater from Villanova University, and his PhD in theater from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. A scholar of American theater, he has published essays and reviews in Theater Journal, Theater Survey, the Journal of American Pop Culture, and in a number of book collections. While his most recent work has focused on the theater in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, he is now beginning a new project on the depiction of the Holocaust in contemporary puppetry. A director and actor, he performed alongside Wabash students in The Tempest and now spends his evenings with the talented cast of Picasso à la Pin Agile, coming soon to a theater near you October 3rd. In his free time, he enjoys playing tennis, reading contemporary fiction, and hanging out with his wife, Professor Crystal Benedicts, his hound Louie, and his amazing baby boy George. Here to give his talk titled The Manly Arts, or A Few Things I Think About Axe Body Spray, Dr. Cherry.
All right. Thank you for that kind introduction, and thank you for inviting me to speak with you today. As I was putting this together, I was mindful of something that Professor Michael Abbott said to me a little while ago. It was opening night at Incident at Vichy, which was a play by the great American playwright Arthur Miller. I directed here a couple of years ago. And I was excited, and I was nervous, the way that directors always are on opening nights. For a director, an opening night is, I suspect, like dropping your kids off at college. You've prepared them as well as you could. And inevitably, you think there was so much more you could have done if you had just a bit more time. But you don't, because there is never enough time. And Professor Abbott said to me, enjoy this, because you don't get that many opening nights in your life. And if you've dedicated yourself to a life in the arts, a life in the theater, to writing about theater, teaching theater, making theater, directing and performing in a lot of plays, you just don't get that many opening nights in your life. And similarly, you don't get that many chapel talks in your life. From your perspective, it might not seem that way. Sitting in those pews week after week, listening to your elders go on and on, it might seem for you that there are an awful lot of chapel talks. But from a speaker's perspective, I can tell you it's very, very special, and I thank you for the opportunity. So I'd like to talk with you today about the manly arts. So what are the manly arts? By one strict definition, these are the actions that make a man in the most stereotypical way, but done artfully. And I'm not going to waste your time telling you things that you can learn from picking up a copy of Esquire or watching those Dos Equis ads, the most interesting man in the world. I'm not going to explain in great detail how to cook a good steak. A sprinkle of salt first, medium heat, just flip once. What to look for in a tux, 2-button, shawl collar, think Connery era James Bond. How to change the oil in your car. Take it to Jiffy Lube. How to camp. Stay in a hotel. And how to make a perfect martini. Use good gin, almost no vermouth. Stir briskly, don't shake, and be 21 years old. Or, my favorite of the moment, the manly art of changing the soiled diaper of a baby in the middle of the night while he is flopping like a salmon without anyone crying, including me. What I would like to talk about today is the manly art of art. And by art, I mean theater, poetry, music, film, and all of the visual arts. The kind of art that Wallies make every day in the Fine Arts Center, in dorm rooms, in classrooms across the campus, and all over the world. The art of the guy shooting and editing a digital film for career services. The art of the senior playing violin for the first time because he can get lessons for cheap. He's always just wanted to try. the beautifully economic art of the student one-act plays that are performed every fall, plays written by Wabash students, acted by Wabash students, directed by Wabash students, and watched by an audience that lives a little bit in awe of what they are seeing and hearing from their friends and colleagues. A few years ago, when I came to Wabash, I went to the cafe in town to drink coffee and grade papers. It's the one on the corner of 231 in Maine. It's Allen's Country Kitchen now. You drink coffee when you write your papers. We drink coffee when we read them. Coffee helps us all get to the same over-caffeinated intellectual space. As I stood there at the register, eager to get to the stack of papers, interested to see what I'm going to find, I overheard a conversation at a nearby table, or rather, as we say in the theater, a soliloquy. A middle-aged man, a Crawfordsvillian, was sitting there giving his opinions rather loudly on various subjects. And one of the things that you learn in life is that if a middle-aged dude is holding forth on a topic so loudly that the entire establishment can hear what he's saying, he almost certainly has no idea what he's talking about. And sure enough, he was talking about the then recent presidential search at Wabash, the one that brought our own Patrick White to this community, and about one candidate who remarked in his interview that he believed that there should be more public art on campus. By public art, I believe he meant statuary, sculpture, murals, the kinds of art that one finds in the public domain. The bloviating middle-aged dude said, "Why would a men's college need public art?" And I stood there, holding my coffee cup in my hand, boggled by this question, which was almost certainly rhetorical, but also completely unsurprised by it. Because what that middle-aged dude in the coffee shop was trumpeting as fact is fiction, equally pervasive and ridiculous, one that is disproven every day on this campus and in the world, that masculinity and art are at odds with each other. This fiction presumes a highly circumscribed conception of what it means to be a man. This fictive worldview indicates that real men like practicality, objectivity, straight lines, numbers, pie charts, logic, football, buffalo wings. And the truth is, you can like all of those things, and William Shakespeare, and Gustav Mahler, and Adrian Rich, and Roy Lichtenstein. The truth is that you can like all of those things and sculpt, paint, compose, write, act, direct, edit, critique, and most of all, care about art. And the stereotype that you can't, that the art isn't in you, is simplistic. It is foolish, but it is also deeply profitable. It is sold to you by multinational corporations that desperately want you to just shut up and watch football and eat buffalo wings so that they can make money. It is profitable to convince men that the stereotypes about them are true. Consider, let us all, the mere existence of Axe body spray. It is machismo in a bottle with names like Anarchy, Silver Fusion, and Tsunami. The packaging is all black with lightning bolts. The Axe body spray is the Oakland Raiders of male grooming products. But this is still cologne. They call it body spray because cologne is European sounding and kind of fey. It's something to make you smell better, or in the case of Axe, smell different. And this is the trick here, right? It's in those names, and it begs this question: who wants to smell like a tsunami? And more importantly, what does a tsunami smell like? But they are meant to put you, the consumer, at ease with your masculinity and sexuality, because stereotypically, a real man doesn't care what he smells like, or he just naturally smells like he spent the night in a pine forest. But of course, a man, at least sometimes, does care. And Axe is there, making sure that you don't feel like a wuss for caring how you smell at $4 a bottle. And partly, I think this has to do with societal expectations about men and self-expression, which is to say, we're not supposed to express the inner self. Or if we are, our self-expression must be measured and controlled. But art is messy. Art is unexpected. If you are making art, you're not really in control. When you are in the fugue state of creation, whether it's playing a piano or contending with a difficult monologue from the Greeks or molding a piece of clay into something that you can only see in your mind's eye, you are not entirely in control of yourself. You are channeling what is inside you and making it visible, present in the world. And that takes confidence and a willingness to give up a bit of control. We are expected to be strong, silent types, just like John Wayne or Clint Eastwood. who were and are both actors, artists themselves. This vision of men and masculinity is an incredible disservice to men. Imagine the idea of men that is perpetuated by this idea, a vision in which creation takes the back seat to learning by rote, one that suggests that men can't be intellectually or culturally sophisticated. But of course, there's a very easy way to disprove this. Quick. Think of all the artists you've ever heard of: painters, sculptors, composers, musicians, theater and film directors. What one thing do they all have in common virtually? For the most part, they're all men. The critics who write about their work, largely all men too. This is not to say that there aren't painters, sculptors, composers, musicians, and theater and film directors and critics who are women, because of course there are. And their contributions have been and continue to be continuously, routinely overlooked. But it is indeed strange that for all of the men who have made art since the world began, our society tells us that art isn't something that real men do. But men need art. They need art as much as women do, because everybody needs art. And importantly, here at Wabash, there is art everywhere. Students and professors make art, they discuss art, they debate the nature of art daily. We are surrounded by art. In this very room, within the Pioneer Chapel, itself a masterful example of Georgian-style architecture, hang the paintings of past presidents and professors. Our history is ensconced in art, because making something art is the act of taking that thing very seriously. What did Dolly Madison take out of the White House when the British burnt it in the War of 1812? The Gilbert Stuart portrait of George Washington. If, God forbid, this chapel were to burn down, I know that there would be Sphinx Club guys who would be racing in here to yank these paintings off the walls to preserve this college's history. It's art. Please note, I am not endorsing this as a course of action. And Rich Woods would have you by the scruff of the neck before you step foot in here anyway. The senior bench is a classic example of participatory public art, although sometimes it looks a little bit more artful than others, right? I often wonder what it would be like to see a time-lapse film of that bench over the years. How many hands have had the making of that piece of history, that work of art? And when the Shout Club painted that bench black for World AIDS Day, that bench turned into political art, a memento mori for the 2 million people who die every year from AIDS-related diseases, a remembrance of the way that that AIDS devastated the gay community in the 80s and 90s. But this is what art can do. It can make the familiar unfamiliar. It can repurpose objects and get you to take notice of something that you ordinarily take for granted. Learning about art teaches us not to take things for granted. It makes us inquire about choice. And generally speaking, this campus as a whole is a work of public art. The red brick, white columns and clapboards, green ivy and grass. It's not like these buildings were designed and built at random. They are a study, a purposeful study in contrasts, different textures and materials, and combined they perform Wabash, a place of contemplation and learning, of nature and nurture. But that bloviating dude's rhetorical question does point to a larger philosophical question. What does art really do for us? And this answer is complicated, but it touches on a lot of what we do here, about living in the 21st century, about liberal education, about being a productive citizen in the democracy. And the place of the arts in America is deceptively central. According to Americans for the Arts, 1.1 million jobs in America are supported by nonprofit arts organizations. That's a staggering number. It's because around every theater, every symphony hall, every museum in this country, there are subsidiary businesses that benefit from that institution's existence. Restaurants, bars, advertising agencies, catering and cleaning companies, businesses that make and service technical equipment. They also directly support builders and plumbers and accountants and lawyers and the like. And we're not even talking about the artists, museum directors, theater directors, musicians themselves. These are jobs that cannot be outsourced because you cannot be an accountant for a performing arts center in Carmel, Indiana, in India. And slightly less of 1% of the country's workforce is supported directly by nonprofit arts organizations. More than farmers, lawyers, accountants, and auditors. And this is just nonprofit. The arts are a massive industry in America, disastrously ill-funded. Federal funding for the arts is around $140 million. Even though the federal income tax revenue from the nonprofit arts industry is $9.6 billion. In 2010, nonprofit arts and cultural organizations pumped an estimated $61.1 billion into the economy. The arts are not only central to the culture of the country and to Wabash, but a critical part of the economy nationally. So what do we get out of studying the arts? Because we are a practical-minded people, right? And there have been plenty of recent studies that provide support to the idea that the arts foster creative thinking skills in domains beyond arts learning. These suggest positive academic, cognitive, and social outcomes for people. In some, studying the arts makes you a better person. A report published in 2008 entitled Arts Education, the Brain, and Language suggests that students who study the arts, particularly the performing arts, extensively develop a capacity for divergent thinking. Divergent thinking is the habit of mind that helps people produce numerous ideas and solutions and adaptations. I think back to the messy thinking that David Blick spoke to us about last week. Or how about a neuroscience study from 2008? It found that students who had intensive arts education exhibited significant advantages in second language acquisition in comparison to other peers in a university language course. Or a study from 2009 that found that university students participating in a drama course showed greater increases in fluency and flexibility of their thinking than a comparison group that did not participate in the drama course because the drama course provided a context, quote, that stimulated the creative potential of participants, increasing their tolerance of uncertainty, provoking their curiosity, and facilitating creative risk-taking. A tolerance for uncertainty, curiosity, creative risk-taking. The capacity for inspiration and innovation is a key for students looking to enter a 21st century workforce. When we think about the most important entrepreneurs of recent memory, it is impossible not to consider someone like Steve Jobs, right? The guy who created Apple. His greatest insight is based on a very simple premise: make technology beautiful. Now, there might be some who say that technology doesn't have to be beautiful. It just has to work. This is a very pragmatic perspective, but it is not innovative. The essence of the liberal education that you receive at this college and at colleges like it, close mentorship and exposure to different ideas, different ways of thought forged by bringing science and art and everything together in between. This brings us to the beautiful fission of new ideas and new ways of thinking. We need to learn to be open to the possibility of innovation. We need to recognize the muse when she or he comes a-calling. So what do we learn when we make art, when we do art? I'm primarily now going to speak from experience here and focus on theater. You learn to work collaboratively toward a common goal. We do this in theater all the time. It includes working with people that you don't like, although I love my colleagues. It means working with people with whom you disagree from time to time. You have to work with different kinds of people, speak to and with different people in different ways. In the theater, you speak with actors, directors, dramaturgs and literary managers, technicians, designers, producers, agents, ad people, donors, and many others. You have to learn to listen and the art of compromise. This is a skill that transcends theater, of course. Business leaders want this in future employees. Actors have the reputation of being divas. But lawyers, CPAs, people in IT services, college professors can be divas too. And you have to work with them anyway in order to get the job done. Leaders want people who can not only articulate what they believe in, but be able to have serious discussions about ideas with others and move a group toward a stated common goal in a timely fashion. This is theater in a nutshell. 5 weeks from auditions to opening night. And opening night, your product better be ready. You learn the importance of getting out of your own head. When you are in rehearsal, or even more when you're performing, you can't worry about what's happening outside this rehearsal or performance. Sports does a similar thing, I think. You can't worry about a calculus test when you're a wide receiver running a route, right? You can't worry about the fact that your girlfriend or boyfriend hasn't called you back. You can't worry about the history paper you haven't written yet. Like sports, making theater compels you to be in the moment, to get out of your head and let your body, your creative instincts do the thinking for you. You learn how to make decisions in situations when you don't have all the answers. Experience is one thing. The ability to know that you can roll with the punches is something else, and a prized trait for people in all walks of life. People who work in business are looking for people who can cooperate with others, but who also can improvise creative solutions to difficult, multi-sided problems. Theater offers us the space to improvise, and not just for actors. Anne Bogart, who's just one of the great American directors working today. If you ever have a chance to see anything that she does, totally go see it. She sometimes does stuff at Urbana-Champaign. In her book, Director Prepares, she writes about what she does when she gets stuck in rehearsal, when she doesn't know what to do next. She will call on all the actors to stop, to hold. Everybody stops what they're doing, right? And she starts walking to the stage from the back of the theater. As a director, when you get to the front of a theater, you have to have an answer, okay? People are staring at you. They're expecting brilliance. You have to have something. But in doing this, Anne Bogart places herself in the position to be inspired. On that walk down those steps to the stage, your mind just whirs into overdrive, trying to find some kind of solution. And great ideas come from this, from placing yourself in a situation where you have to make a decision. But often in art, there are no right answers, just a series of decisions. Theater teaches you to trust your instinct and make them. You learn how to deal with crisis, because in every production, no matter what, there is a moment of crisis. There is always a point when you're like, wow, that did not work at all. An extraordinary crisis happened to me here during a production of Glengarry Glen Ross a few years ago. A student named Patrick McAllister had the role playing the cop. Very successful opening night. And he came down with appendicitis. All right? He calls me the next day from the hospital and says, I can't be in the show tonight. This is around 4 o'clock. Curtain goes up at 8. I turn to Nelson Barre, class of 07, my assistant director, and said, suit up, you're going in. And so we got a notepad, like the kind that policemen carry, and we just rigged it so that all of his lines were in it. Crisis solved, right? I went to dinner patting myself on the back for having such a bright student. And then, during the show, Nelson did something extraordinary, very special, and terrifyingly insane. Without consulting me, he memorized the lines in 3 hours, walked out on stage without his notebook, wire walking without a net. He was amazing. He didn't drop a line, the audience didn't suspect a thing, and I didn't have a stroke. So that was great too. But it was out of crisis, inspiration, and brilliance. You learn how to keep things going when it is all coming apart. In a play I was doing in graduate school when I was in New York City, something terrible happened to a friend of mine when he was on stage. There was to be a punch thrown in a particular scene, and in theater, you always rehearse the fight sequences right before you go out on stage, because even fake fighting is actually pretty dangerous. And his fight partner, who was kind of a schmuck, the guy throwing the punch came late to the theater. There wasn't time to practice. So my friend, Alvin, and he was tied to a chair in this scene. It was this mobster torture sequence. His fight partner misjudged the distance and punched Alvin right in the face in front of the audience. His nose is broken, there's blood everywhere, and he can't see because his vision is blurred. He gets backstage, and we stuff Kleenex up his nose to keep the blood from getting on his costume, and on all of the other costumes he had to wear to finish the show before going to the hospital. In talking to audience members afterward, one was disappointed because the blood just didn't look very real. Theater teaches you to keep things going even when it's all coming apart. One final thing that theater teaches you is how to use resistance. There is never enough money, never enough time. You are always limited by your own talents and the talents of others. So you have to work within and push back against these conditions that resist you. In our modern world, everything conspires to take time and energy away from you, to take yourself less seriously, to push you to conform. Every email, every blog post, every tweet, every time you compulsively check Facebook and the Huffington Post when you should be doing your stuff, that is resistance. Everything wants you to stop. But if you persist, you might learn something. Persistence in the face of resistance is everything. And I'm guided in this point, again, by Anne Bogart. In Director Prepares, she says, quote, "The act of making theater is already utopian because art is an act of resistance against circumstances. If you are making theater now, you have already achieved utopia," end quote. I would actually expand that out from theater to encompass all of the arts. If you are painting, you have achieved utopia. If you are alone in a room, wrapped in your thoughts, practicing the cello in the Fine Arts Center, you have achieved utopia. If you are writing a poem for the first time because you want to propose to your girlfriend or boyfriend, you have achieved utopia. If you are breaking out in flop sweat as you wait in the wings, ready to step out on stage as another person, ready to tell their story, ready to perform truth, ready to die a little bit, ready to put your body, your soul, your ego, and every ounce of sweat on the line for art, that is utopia. That is manly. It is womanly. It is everything in between. It is a way of being alive that works against everything that society tells you is right, because you know it's right. It is a way of being alive that is filled with purpose and love, and that pushes you to become a better person. I've always wanted to live a life like that. And so have so many Wabash men. Theater guys who have spread to the epicenters of American performance. Luke Robbins, class of 11, training at Second City in Chicago. Josue Gutierrez, class of 11, getting his MFA in acting at Columbia in New York. Daniel Blake, class of 09. Andrew Ditz, class of 07. Ronaldo Pacheco, class of 06, all working in LA. In music, Justin Rust, class of 99, earned a PhD in composition, now has a job as coordinator of music performance and education at Florida Atlantic University. Art major, Yvonne Asibo Choi, class of 08, finished an MA in art history in Mexico City, is working at a contemporary art gallery in Mexico City's art district. Diego Aliaga, class of 11, just had an interactive installation at the National Museum of Art in Bolivia. These are just a few stories of artful Wabash men. Wabash alumni are all over the globe making art, telling truths, living humanely by placing art at the center of their lives. Because in doing so, they place art at the center of all of our lives. This is the manly art of leaving the world a better, more interesting, more beautiful place. all without smelling like a tsunami. Our lives are the better for the art that is within them. So, in your time at Wabash and in the years beyond, support the arts, because the arts support us all. Thank you.
Just a couple of brief announcements. TGIF will be at Fiji this week. This Saturday, football will be at Hanover for its season opener starting at 1:30. Soccer will be at Rose-Hulman starting at 2 p.m. And then Sunday, soccer will be at Earlham starting at 2. Please rise and sing Old Wabash.